it off, and you can eventually kill the plant if it gets a very high traffic. But just imagine if you leave the soil down about this much, you could plant something like your peppermint in there, and if people walk across it and wear it down and break it off, you've still got that ½ inch, and it's going to come back out over and over and over again. But if you put it right up high, it'll get worn off at the surface and killed. So that's one of the ways that you keep things that you plant between your stones and all alive. Yes, ma'am?
We have some thyme that's growing in between ours.
Yeah.
How do you, some areas up closer to the house are much taller than the others. Do I need to be trimming that down or just step on it?
It would be strictly for aesthetics. You can trim it if you like, but if it's not a high traffic area and if you don't mind it being a little taller, no, the thyme will be happiest if you never touched it. But there are a lot of different low-growing things. Other parts of the country, they have even a wider range of things than we have. And there's a whole series, the folks in Denver that we get a lot of our bedding plants from, they have a program called Steppables. And they have something like 50 different plants that if you live where it's just a little bit cooler, something like 50 different kinds of plants that you can use as a ground cover that you walk on or put stones out and walk through. We don't have that many choices here. But once again, we do have some good things. I just love peppermint. You know, just crush the leaves a little bit. Pretty soon the whole place will smell like peppermint.
And that under an oak tree?
Oh, sure, absolutely. You'll have to water a little bit more than you would Asian jasmine, but the mint will grow in low light.
Do you need to put plastic underneath it?
I'm sorry?
Do you need to put plastic down?
Oh, no. No, don't ever put plastic under anything. Plastic should be outlawed from the landscape. Plastic is the worst damage that plastic does is that it keeps oxygen from getting into the soil. And your plant's roots have to have oxygen. You put down plastic and try to plant through it, your plants will not thrive. It'll hold too much water underneath, it'll keep the oxygen from getting in, and that will lead to lots of problems. Yes, ma'am?
That's not the same as weed block.
No, weed block is a woven material. I don't usually recommend it because it doesn't really block the weeds for very long. It may stop a few things from coming up through it, but you get 1 or 2 good dust storms, you're going to have enough dirt on top of it that those weed seeds will blow in and grow like you've never seen. So I've never seen that weed block really does a whole lot to stop things.
Could I ask back, you were talking about using mulches for areas instead of the granite. Any particular mulch that seems to hold up better? I've been trying, just experimenting with some. I've tried some hardwood mulch.
Hardwood mulches will last better than just a mixed shredded mulch. Cypress mulch is probably the longest lasting of all because it doesn't tend to rot away. And I like stringy fibrous material because it doesn't float, it doesn't wash. My actual favorite is probably chipped up cedar. Not really cedar, but juniper from up in the hill country. I generate a lot of cedar mulch because when we cut cedar on my property, when Roberta and Ed cut cedar on their property, we don't ever burn it. We run it through a chipper and you get just piles and piles of this wonderful mulch, and the juniper wood doesn't decompose nearly as fast. The hardwood mulch is probably the most attractive, but if you're going to buy something in a bag, I'd either go with hardwood or cypress mulch. If you're going to buy something by the truckload, well, don't buy it. Up in Kendall County, they've actually, in fact, one of the commissioners called me recently and said, we have generated so much cedar mulch that we're having to stop grind because we're making it faster than anybody wants to come get it. And so last month they did they give it away to begin with, but they charge $5. If you go out there, you pay or you tip the guy $5 for loading up your truck or trailer. They even waived that last month. And a lot of these places that chip up the cedar are happy to give it away. It's so funny, I remember when they built the Jewish Community Center out there, my friend Ron Aaron called and he said, you got to tell people we're going to give away all the cedar mulch that we generated in doing this. And it's so funny, Ron is such a great guy and such a funny fella. And he called me the next day and they moved from, I think, the Washington, D.C. area, and he said, Bob, he said, it's the most amazing thing I've ever seen. There was a line of pickups a ½ mile long, and Jewish people don't drive pickup trucks. He said, it's the most unusual thing I've ever seen. I said, Ron, you haven't lived in Texas very long. Everybody drives pickups here. But it was just surprising to me that, you know, you just tell people free mulch, how many people will come get it? When the truth is that in Bernie you can go out and get all the free cedar mulch you want anytime you want. The Bitters Road brush dump out here behind the airport, I don't know if they charge a tipping fee to, you know, to get your truck loaded or whatever. It's not as good as the mulch that you're going to buy from New Earth or Fertile Garden or somewhere, but it's free and it's not bad at all. And if you're doing, especially if you're doing a big area, just use that and it's a great mulch.
Will it hold together? I find that the hardwood mulch, once the sun hits it, it kind of forms a mat. And so when the dog runs across it, it doesn't tear it up as badly. Will the cedar mulch do that?
The cedar mulch does the same thing if it's relatively shredded. You want to avoid things that are just, you know, chunks like bark.
Right.
Pine bark is absolutely the worst thing that's ever been invented as a mulch for a number of reasons. But your shredded hardwood mulch, your shredded cedar mulch, it's like it just kind of, it locks together and it does stay in place very well. Now if you have puppies like mine that slide and play and everything else, yeah, they're going to put it in the piles and it's not going to lock up quite as much. But yeah, it does, it's not really a crust, but it forms a fairly hard surface and almost 100% cuts down on mud problems.
Where exactly do you get the free cedar mulch?
As so far as I know, they're giving it to anyone now. The east edge of Bernie is where the Kendall County Fairgrounds are, and they have their big grinding site out there, and that's where you go. It's open Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And like I say, they've gone back to charging you a whole $5 to have somebody there with a loader that'll fill your truck up for you. And having stood and shoveled that stuff into a truck many times before, let me tell you, it's worth $5 to have it. And I might tell you that's just, again, this is sort of a day for hints and things that'll make your work a little bit easier. But if you haul things, if you have a pickup and you haul things like soil and compost and mulch on any regular basis, go by, and the only place I know that has them here in town is Fertile Garden Supply, but go by and buy what they call the load handler. It costs about $100. And basically it's kind of like a heavy-duty tarp that goes into the bed of the truck, but it's got a roller on the front and a roller on the back, and the bottom one has like a crank on it. And even a person without a lot of strength, you simply open the tailgate on the pickup or what, and you sit there and with just no effort at all, you turn this crank, and it just moves all that material right out of the truck and dumps it. Easiest way on earth to unload a truck, and it's worth $100 if you do a lot of this. And I've known people that have had them for years. They say they're very, very durable. I just put it in the back of my Gator, and I got a little dump truck bed on the back of that. But look into what they call the load handler if you haul a lot of material. Yes, sir.
Do you have those for trailers?
I don't know. Be worth asking. I don't know any reason that you couldn't on a smaller trailer. I mean, it's basically the same principle as these semis that are what they call live bottom, you know, that just move the material out. But I know they make one for pickups, but I don't know why it could be adopted to the trailer. And if you're clever at all, you can probably make your own for a whole lot less than that. But it sure does make it easy to get stuff out of the back of a truck.
Where do you get one? Where do you get the?
Fertile Garden Supply?
Oh, they have.
Yeah, they have. That's the only place I know. They were $97 last time I looked at them. Question, yes.
Revisiting the difficult areas to grow things, just for a second. Dry creek beds.
Mhm.
Part of our property, it used to be a dry creek bed, and it's, other than bringing the soil in and putting on top of it, but still I have a problem with things dying out. And any suggestions for anything like that?
Do you have a fairly large yard? Or?
Fairly large, not huge, but it's got some areas. I put a big path in there, and then, but I have an area that's just kind of, it's just like a creek bed, basically.
I probably would dress it up and make it look more like a creek bed. Make it look like it belongs there. Maybe, put some flagstone and more or less line it. On my property, I've got some little drainage areas that 125 years ago, whoever lived on the property first actually laid the limestone into some of these drainage areas just to carry the water out. And I would think you could, rather than fight what it is, you could do that. depending on the size of your yard, it could be very interesting to build like a little bridge over it to really
Yeah, I was
define
thinking
it.
about that too.
And I think you can make it an architectural feature rather than a problem area.
Okay.
Other than that, there's no soil there because the water's
Yeah,
carried all the
just-
soil
yeah,
away.
just-
So your only option would really be to, come back and, like you say, fill it with soil. And if we get a big enough rain, it'll probably